Have you ever been walking through a big box or grocery store and suddenly somebody comes up to you?
Hi there. Here, check it out.
Or you see a demonstration of a new, limited time only product available for purchase?
So the entire 5-piece set retails for $55.
Well, this is the true story about the business behind many of those products. The vast network of people hawking those products, and the motivation behind all the selling. A motivation advertised as the answer to all of one's prayers, yet completely unattainable to all but a select few. This business hides behind many names, the names of countless individually incorporated companies, in a move to give people the illusion of entrepreneurial freedom. These companies hire a variety of people for positions with a variety of names, but they all do the same thing. They comprise a circle of individual companies that rely on a large amount of ambiguity and secrecy, and on a small set of heavily vetted scripts that the lower ranks are taught to jot down over and over again in seemingly endless seas of notebook pages, so they can learn and remember. The circle allows these companies to network and conference with each other and share strategies and workers, while demanding that these supposed business owners follow the commands of their parent company, which is never mentioned until you are actually employed at one of these places. The owners are treated as gods, while the lower ranks are taught to work harder just to scrape by. Slaves for breadcrumbs, because the harder and harder you work now, the greater the payoff in the future. The big picture. At least that's the script. For those who have not endured this business, it may be difficult to understand. I would have a hard time understanding it myself if I hadn't lived it. But thousands of people have lived it, and we are telling our stories. Through all of our experiences, our many notebooks filled with indoctrinations disguised as marketing techniques and reputable outside sources, you will see a clearly painted picture of this secretive worldwide business. This business targets the most vulnerable. People who are looking for a career change, for a career that requires little to no experience, and of course, people who just downright need a job and are willing to take anything that comes along. This career opportunity is advertised far and wide, saturating career websites populated with plenty of job seekers. Sometimes you won't even need to apply. They come searching for you.
So how'd you first come across the position?
I didn't.
Okay.
I got a phone call,
How was the position advertised?
by a phone call saying they saw me on like a career builder website, just like, hey, check this out.
They emailed me. Yeah, which is weird. They emailed me. I think they said they saw my resume on probably Indeed or Career Builder, because I do have that up there. So they emailed me, and I kind of was suspect.
If you get selected for an interview, which basically means you have a resume and a pulse, you will be contacted by the company receptionist. As some receptionists book interviews for 2 or more individual companies in this business circle, the person you talk to might not even work in the same office. You might be told you will be interviewing with an event marketing company that does on-site product promotions. They may glamorize the position by emphasizing there is no cold calling involved. They also make sure you have a car. That's about the only qualification, because then you have the opportunity to drive hours and hours a day with nothing but a taxed travel reimbursement, which just might cover your gasoline. Once the interview is set up, you should receive an email with directions to the company's office, which is almost always very basic and nondescript. In the first interview, the interviewer, either the owner or assistant manager, speaks very quickly and recites multiple cliches, that they are growing fast and need more positive go-getters who want to do more than what is expected. It is here you will first be told this business's 3 commandments. Have a great work ethic, have a strong student mentality, and always have a positive attitude. Through this, they begin laying the foundation to control every aspect of your behavior. Every positive thing you will do is a reflection of your keeping these commandments. Every negative thing you will do is a reflection of your having broken these commandments, and those negative things will need to change. If the interviewer likes you, you will be contacted for a second interview. The pace and ambiguity of the first interview leads many people to the second one without even knowing what the job is for which they are interviewing. The second interview is done on location at a big box or grocery store where the business's products are being sold. The whole purpose of this interview is twofold: to show you how you will spend your day and, if necessary, to put you on your back foot in an attempt to make you feel inferior to the interviewer. First, you will be led to a less crowded area of the store, where the interviewer will ask for your resume and begin to write on it. They have been trained to mark up your resume on purpose and to assign it a number other than 1 to make it seem like you are not the only person who has interviewed that day, and to make you sell yourself to them. If you show at least a little interest, you will be allowed to spend some time watching the sales performance, taking plenty of good notes to display your strong student mentality. After this, you will go back to the first location and be asked about the notes you took. You will then hear a breakdown of the stages of the opportunity, basically what your responsibilities will entail at each level and how much you will make. This begins with the amount you will make as an entry-level rep, which is almost always an overstatement and is based on the ideal situation of you being an elite seller from the start. If you can sell, you will be promoted to team leader and be given additional responsibilities, training new employees, doing second-round interviews to build your team, running meetings, and having critical conversations with underperforming reps, all without an extra dime of pay. Unless you look at it from the fact that now you get more day-long solo shifts in the stores and don't have to split your commission with anyone. Then the increased number makes sense.
Getting the opportunity to go solo inside of a store is a huge opportunity.
Within a year's time, if you master the product knowledge and become an expert at training others, you may then be promoted to management, where you will learn the ins and outs of running one of these businesses. You will then be promoted to your own office, which they say means owning your own business, with starting pay between $75,000 and $100,000 a year.
Fast money. Fast money. That's how they get you.
When I was looking at it, and it was specifically slated as an entry-level job, and I got to the interview and they said, hey, you know, this is entry level, but we can teach you all of these things and you'll have your own team and you'll be able to develop this experience. At that point in time, I looked at that and I went, good, you know, I need to be able to get to the point where I have financial stability, where I have a career. And that was kind of, I think, the biggest draw.
After this breakdown, you may be able to ask a few questions before the interviewer sends you on your way, but not before assigning the homework. You will be instructed to email the interviewer several reasons why you think you should be hired for the opportunity, and what makes you better than all the other candidates who may or may not have interviewed that day. Again, it's all about sales, and specifically, selling yourself. Something you may hear in both of the first two interviews is the deceptive phrase, "We are looking to wrap up the interview process within the next week."
They were not willing to answer all of my questions during the initial interview process, and that's something that I remember very clearly. I think that I went into it kind of eyes open as to what I was getting myself into, to an extent at least, because I have a tendency to ask a lot of questions, not just about like my job, but about the structure of the business, and I wanted to know what I was getting into, and it was always, it wasn't shot down in a way that was particularly suspicious, but it was kind of directed away, you know, like, well, how long is it going to take me to get here? Like, you know, how is this compensation plan set up? What's the kind of business that you get at the end of it? Like, how is this business set up? Why are they paying for the office for you? You know, like, what is the structure of this? And those questions that I sort of tried to ask were deflected. Or it's something that you'll learn later. Oh, it's something we'll teach you another time. And that was, you know, that was something that I think stood out to me a little bit, was the amount of information I wasn't allowed to have. But other than that, the interview process was very compelling. It was very convincing.
Many offices require a third interview, which allows you to drive all the way back out to the office for basically a 10-minute question and answer session with the owner. If you show some type of go-get-em positive attitude and don't say anything stupid or ask any critical questions about the company and the sales process, you will likely be offered the position. Congratulations! You have now been offered the opportunity of a lifetime, just like everybody else that didn't make a negative impression.
The structure is to teach people a process that has proven to be successful, to teach it to them quickly, to teach them to advance quickly, and like all legal or illegal pyramid schemes, it's about the bottom man growing as quickly as possible.
They all have this sad sob story. That, I was, they all said they started off and they started off with the company because they weren't meeting their funds and they needed more money. And when they started off, they were making a lot of money. And I guess they sold me with that because during that time I was struggling. So if you're telling somebody how you were struggling, how you overcame it with the company, it appeased me.
Every person I talked to, the receptionist, the team leader in the store, the owner, they all said that they were looking to wrap up the interview process. They made it sound like it was a short process and they were looking for only a few people. But once you get hired, once you get into the office, you realize that the receptionist is always on the phone. They're always making phone calls, they're always setting up interviews, and that process never stops. It's a revolving door. And when I was in the business, I just chose to not critically look at that. I chose to ignore it.
I don't think we're any more full of shit than any other entry-level sales organization. I just think we are better trained to package and present the bullshit in a way that's attractive to somebody that doesn't know any better.
Your first day in the business is a surreal experience. It's designed to make this stand out from any other job you've had. You will be met by a team leader, ideally the person who did your second round interview, in order to show you a familiar face. You will then be taken into the impact room, where all the morning magic takes place. The technical term for what you are about to experience is atmosphere. Another term often used, specifically to boost the perception of the need for the daily meetings, is business school. You will then be asked to get out your notebook. You are about to be taught the first of the 4 systems. Every aspect of the business relies on these 4 law-like systems. A veteran rep will write out, word for word, the information on a whiteboard. You must learn every word, in exact sequential order. No synonyms, no similarities, no substitutions. When you come back the next day, you must teach back the information, word for word, with 100% exactness. At 9 a.m., the workshop starts. Everybody is standing. There are no chairs. This is identified as a way to keep everybody active and awake, but in reality, it's just another method of behavior control. A team leader or manager then takes the stage and gets everybody's attention with a form of classical conditioning. The owner or team leader then drills the room on sales methods, and the office practices their techniques. After another mini meeting, called an impact, the office breaks off into groups, based primarily on what each person is selling that day. As a newbie, you will likely receive the office tour. Some things to look out for are photographs of people who have risen through the business to open their own office, and the Step 7 boards of the team leaders, which reflect their goals, dreams, and aspirations. The office will reconvene, and after getting more conditioned responses, the owner will shout out the names of who put up the best numbers from the previous day. These are the high rollers, the people you are taught to network with.
Hello.
And with whom you need to set up a one-on-one. The owner will then conduct a motivational meeting to inspire the office before sending everybody out to sell stuff.
Everything was, yeah, it was just, you became more of a yes man. Everything positive.
At the end of your first atmosphere, your second round interviewer will approach and ask you, with bubbling positivity, how your first day went. They are highly motivated to keep you around. The more interviewees they get to stick around, the larger their team. The larger their team, the greater likelihood they can train a sufficient number of team leaders. If they create enough team leaders, they get promoted to ownership.
It's, I guess, kind of relevant that the previous place that I worked was the tile shop. And I don't know if you know this, but there's a class action lawsuit out against them for a bunch of labor law violations. And I had seen a lot of not the exact same thing, but the same attitude employed there to try to sucker people into taking shitty positions. So when I was at the tile shop, you would go in as a salesperson, but then if you proved yourself or you did well enough, you could become an assistant manager to the store. And if you were willing to suffer through being an assistant manager, which had no increase in benefits for a heck of a lot more work, then maybe one day you could become the manager of your own store. And at that point, you're guaranteed a certain level of income. And I think that to you, that might sound a little bit familiar, you know, as long as you're willing to scrape for X period of time, then you can get your carrot. So when I was in the first week and we were having, you know, these super exciting, like jazzed up, like marketing meetings and talking about all this stuff, you know, like, oh yeah, we're gonna be a team and we really want you to be invested and we want you to make friends and we want you to be happy. I started seeing some of the kind of, you know, drink the Kool-Aid attitude that I had seen prior. And that's sort of what raised some of the red flags for me. But at that point in time, I was willing to give it a shot, you know? And I needed a job and I needed to make money.
Within your first week, you will be expected to learn and teach back all 4 systems. You will be taught how these 4 systems influence every aspect of the business, from your daily approach, to sales, to the number of customers you interact with, to everything. If you forget a word or use a different word than what was taught to you, you failed, and you have to try again tomorrow. After 2 unsuccessful tries, you receive the conversation about falling behind. These laws will be drilled into your brain. If you have a great day, it's because the systems work. If you have a bad day, you didn't use the systems well enough. If you're not sure how to react in a certain situation, consult your systems. If you're on a break and need something to do, rewrite your systems. If your office is not doing too great, expect a pop quiz on the systems.
You know, are they teaching things back the same way that they learned them? Do they have the ability to explain the mentality and the why behind the marketing psychology that they're teaching? And you know, obviously, if a new guy comes into the program and they learn the system from Susie, and Susie teaches it a different way than Jason, that's gonna be really confusing. It's gonna be hard to duplicate that.
They call this having a great student mentality. But what's really happening is a systematic conditioning of your beliefs, allowing the business to constrain a person's individual thought to a very limited number of acceptable options. Options you are expected to regurgitate when asked. The constant and repetitive bombardment of this information is tantamount to indoctrination, or even brainwashing, and requires the individual to accept these concepts as normal, infallible law. In other words, you repeat what the masters tell you, and you accept it as true.
I think that's why they look for individuals that are kind of younger, less experienced.
It would also maybe appeal to someone like fresh out of high school or fresh out of college who doesn't have any work experience, because it'll definitely be like eye-opening. Like maybe someone who's a little bit shy out of the box really can like help them grow some personal or life skills, maybe some job experience. That'd be great, but overall they really just target those sharper people who are just kind of like down on their luck and can't find a decent job at that time or moment, and just really exploit them.
They use a lot of the same building of relationships and building of rapport and building of trust between the person who's like your manager and the other members of the team to give you a personal reason to stay there. And they don't do it because they want everyone to get along and they want the business to thrive. They do it because they want you to be stuck. They want you to be on the hook. And they also use a lot of the same marketing tactics and strategies that they're teaching to us to apply to people, and taking that and directing it towards the employees. So they're not just teaching you how to sell, they're selling the job to you every single day. And that's why those morning meetings were so manipulative, because you have to go to these morning meetings. You don't have to go to the morning meetings, but you have to go because it reflects on your performance. And it sets up this series of rewards and punishments, where you're rewarded for working without getting paid, where you're rewarded for putting your own personal time, effort, and energy into it without compensation, and you're socially punished or psychologically punished for questioning the system.
The indoctrination continues after morning atmosphere. Throughout the week and on weekends, you are subjected to mandatory national conference calls. Roll call is taken to ensure you don't miss the brainwashings, and you are reported to your owner if you are not logged on. The calls consist of the same repetitive themes as morning atmosphere, whether the person running the call is in your office or in another office on the other side of the country. These usually take place as you are driving to your particular store.
Know your stuff before you go in there. The last, there's an attachment on the closing circle. That's another common area. Well, sometimes people will lose people. It's after the close. People pause. We don't know what to do. We start trying to come up with more fear of loss just because they're saying, I'll come back, when really it means it's our closing circle. Do you know this stuff going into your rotation? How well do you prepare? And if you're here for something bigger, if you're here for a management training program, which hopefully you are, right? Worst job, best opportunity. Then I would get in the habit of preparing now. It's not something where I'm like, hey, well, when I'm an owner, then I'll learn how to prepare to go into a rotation, right? Get in the habit of preparing now. Know your stuff.
Every single one of our marketing techniques was broken down into these cutesy little phrases so that we could kind of, beat them into people's heads. And on the one hand, that was a good thing to remember all of the marketing techniques, but on the other hand, a lot of them seemed dehumanizing towards the people, not only us, but the people that we were supposed to be, selling things to.
Along with the systems and the scripted, conditioned responses in morning meetings, this business has coined a language of its own. Over and over again, you'll hear the word JUICE, which is an acronym for Join Us in Creating Excitement. In noun form, for example, Juice by You, it means congratulations or great job. In response form, usually when an owner asks, juice, the group responds with, juice. It is the basic equivalent to, yes, master. Juice, juice, juice! On the website Devil Corp, you will find a non-comprehensive list of words that will become a part of your everyday vocabulary. The field is the term used to describe the stores where you sell the business's products. It's a place nobody wants to be for long. So you are expected to sell a huge amount of things to get out of the field and into ownership as soon as possible. If your sales exceed the national average for the day, then you have just set the pace, or rang bell. How do you ring bell? You build customer impulse and get them so excited over the product or the deal, they want to buy the product without much thinking. You build impulse by successfully 5-stepping the customer, a direct reference to the first system you learn on your first day in the business. When your day finally ends, you call your team leader to break down your day. This means discussing the ups and downs of the field and holding yourself accountable to the business's sales standards. If you had a bad day, you probably need to network more. In other words, you call a random person, possibly on the other side of the country, whom you've never met, to ask them questions about how well they're selling. You are encouraged to do this because you are in a copy, cheat, and steal business. Whatever somebody else is doing that's working, you take their ideas for yourself. A bad day in the field may have been because you lost your attitude, started thinking negatively, or in other words, got negged out, and probably didn't think enough about your step 7.
Challenges. Everything's just a challenge. Oh, you had a challenging day. I found it really patronizing the way that they use that, because on the one hand, yeah, I understand that you need to approach every day as though, hey, I'm going to encounter challenges, there are going to be problems that I need to overcome, there are going to be obstacles. But I found that in the office context and in the cultural context of that business, it was used as a way to undermine legitimate critiques and complaints about the work we were being told to do, or the neighborhoods that we were being told to do it in, or, you know, complete and basic denials of the demographic facts that we were dealing with. And it was something that was used in a very, it was meant to be an empowering thing, and it became a belittling thing.
Always have a positive attitude.
It's totally up to you. Everybody's doing it. I just wouldn't want you to miss out. Totally up to you. Hey sir, real quick, check it out.
Whatever word they use, it pretty much equates to being a liar, cheat, and a thief.
There are also certain words the business deems swear words that you should never, ever say. Never refer to what you do as a job, only as an opportunity.
I've got to invest my time into that as business school rather than just like a job or a requirement.
When talking to a customer, never say buy or sell. You don't want to give them the impression that they have to spend money to make a purchase or that they are being sold to. In fact, the whole concept of sales is downplayed. If somebody you are interviewing is hung up on the in-store sales aspect of the job, hit them with this.
We're not looking for a salesperson, but we do conduct sales at our events in order to drive results for our clients. So we are looking for somebody who wants to learn about how sales works because they understand it's the bread and the butter of business and move from that and put themselves into a management type position.
Once you become a team leader, usually within the first 4 to 6 weeks, you will be welcomed to the next level of indoctrination, the team leaders meetings. These weekly or bi-weekly meetings, which sometimes take place as early as 7 in the morning before a full day in the store, are lessons in the correct script to follow when conducting second-round interviews, having critical conversations, and indoctrinating your team members with the correct mentality for what they are being told to do. Leaders are given word-for-word responses to answer any pointed question that may arise. For example, if one of your recruits is complaining about how little money they are making, you hit them with this.
The field isn't meant to make us a ton of money. The field is meant to develop a skill set that we can do so much more with later and put us in a position to drastically change our income within 6 to 12 months. I'll be the first to tell you, you can get a job making more money today. But I don't know where you can find another position where you will make more money tomorrow.
They're going to ask you what motivates you. And it's usually one of 4 things. They call it the 4 F's. It's either fortune, family, fame, or free time. And they use this business, whichever one your motivation is, any one of those 4 F's, they use this business to tell you this is the tool to use to get that. So if it's fortune, you know, with this business, you get to ownership, you'll make more money than you'll ever need. If it's family or free time, you know, you'll get to set your own hours, you'll get to take off when you want to, you'll be able to spend as much time as you want with the people you love. If it's fame, you'll be lauded in this business, you know, you'll be one of the top owners, people around the country will know your name.
And when I got to the point where, you know, I hit team leader and I was starting to go to like the special leader meetings and we got to the nitty-gritty of talking about not just how to handle my own sales, but how to handle my team, I realized that they were laying out specific methods for manipulating people, for forcing them or encouraging them to act in a way that was contrary to their own best interests.
If someone brings up the seemingly never-ending hiring process, even though everyone is told it is quickly being wrapped up, you are supposed to say, "We are always talent scouting, always looking to come through for our clients more effectively," and feed them some crap about opening another office location, and we will need to hire more people to staff the shows run by that office. It was explicitly stated regarding mentality that the goal of team leaders is to debug their recruits' current mindset and reprogram them and to change the way people think.
Some leaders meetings were based on talking to the people on your team and building and growing and motivating others, where some other meetings were basically just a bunch of people sitting around an office that had this status of leadership talking smack about the other people, being like, that ghetto like sweater they wore instead of a jacket, like we got to have a critical conversation with them.
You will be bombarded with cliches that are meant to inspire you and get you through your days in the field. Time now equals time later. Employees are taught to think about the unimaginable amount of hours they put into the business as an investment, instead of thinking about any sacrifices they might be making.
What are you willing to invest? What are you putting in? And then are you going above and beyond to get every opportunity to put in 110%?
Financially, when I first moved down here, it was just kind of a struggle because I did have some money saved to move down here, and that just got eaten up very quickly. And then another big thing is just like missing out on things and basically getting bullied and told that like you missing your cousin's wedding or your aunt's funeral or like your like annual float trip with your friends. It's time now for time later, and you're not even going to worry about missing that cousin's wedding or this event or that event because you're going to be super rich and you're going to be a manager and you're going to be living it up. Well, you know what? I missed out on a bunch of stuff that I regret missing out on because you kind of fall short to the people who really care for you.
If you show your owner you are a top leader, you may be selected to take the next step toward total indoctrination, attending the quarterly Top Leaders Conference. Leading sellers from offices all over the country are brought together, most often in Dallas, Texas, for a weekend of nonstop trainings, speeches, and brainwashings in an attempt to emphasize the big picture and inspire you to work even harder to get into ownership. You are bused to a hotel only 3 miles from the airport, so there is little chance you will stray outside the bubble. In between 3 all-you-can-eat meals a day, you are expected to network nonstop. You get to mingle with millionaires, people who are better than you, and you get to hear them tell you what you need to do better. You'll hear new owners rave about how great the business is, and veteran owners relish in their celebrity, as leaders are taught to worship their success.
So I will admit to you, freely since I'm not in the job anymore, I was already planning on leaving before we went. I was giving it the opportunity to change my mind, in that I was on the fence because of all the things that I had mentioned before. Like, I could see that it was manipulating people. I could see that the only way that you could get ahead in the business was by being willing to sort of dismiss your own personal ethics in order to get ahead. And I was worried that that was necessary to success in the job. But I wanted to see if maybe there were other people who handled it differently. Like maybe it was because you know of who taught it to Tyshawn, who was teaching it to us, maybe it didn't go all the way up. It absolutely did.
They'll tell you it isn't a sales position, it's a marketing position, but if you look at the structure and how you excel in the business, it's absolutely ridiculous to think that way. Everything you do relies on sales. If you don't make sales, you don't get paid, you don't get interviews, so you can't build your team, and if you can't build your team, then you don't get to ownership. You're pretty much stuck selling stuff in a store. So regardless of what they say in the business, it always goes back to selling, even though they downplay it.
The one thing I didn't like is that I think in the beginning they was making it sound like it didn't matter if we sold or not, you know, but it did matter. It mattered. So I kind of felt like misled, if that makes any sense, because you know, you can't say in the beginning, oh, it doesn't matter if you sell nights, you're going to have good days and bad days, and then...
Do you feel it was overly downplayed?
For me, yes. I was a salesman. That's what I do, you know. I'm really good at sales. And we talked a lot about managing people, and that's great. As an owner, that's very important. But as an entry level and a trainer, it's not as important. Maybe as a trainer per se once you're further along, but at entry level, sales is what you need in order to move up. The best salesman gets the most interviews. You get the most interviews, you move to a trainer, and then you move on to owner.
The driving force behind this business's sales is impulse. The owners bank on the notion that customers can be talked into buying anything. as long as you can show that person that they need whatever it is you are selling, even if they can't afford it or really want it. Before setting foot into a store, you will be sent a prep day email, many of which resemble indoctrinating propaganda, blanketed with large, colorful fonts, extreme use of punctuation, and demands, or standards, that all reps must meet. You will also be required to log on to at least one national conference call. Some emails include step-by-step nonverbal instructions for each customer interaction. There are two specific forms of selling strategies in this business. First, there is the individual approach, or check it out.
So an introduction that we're going to use is like, hi, how's it going? Here, check it out.
The idea here is to be quick, interactive, and not too pushy.
Hey sir, how's it going?
Hi.
Check this out super fast.
You find somebody walking through a store when you approach them and catch them off guard with something really quick, or tell them, hey, check it out.
What we'll use in this is what we call our C factors. So the first one is smile. Obviously, if I smile, you're gonna smile. The second thing we use is eye contact. So it builds trust. If I was, talking to you, staring at the ground, right? You're probably not gonna believe what it is that I'm saying. But if I'm looking at you staring right in the eyes, everything that I say has validity. And then obviously, step 3, or the third thing we use is enthusiasm. We want to show that we're genuinely excited about the product, which of course piques curiosity.
The key here is to get the customer to look at you. So you are taught to speak loudly and wave your hand by your face to establish eye contact. You then want to approach to try to get
product in hand.
The idea being, if the customer grabs the product, there's a greater likelihood they're going to buy it.
We want to build a sense of ownership for the consumer. Once you put it on your body, once you've decided that you look great in it or you love it, you're probably more likely to get it. It's the same thought process in letting the members actually feel, touch, hold the products that we're working with.
You're also taught to approach women and men differently. If you approach a woman, you're taught to extend your arm toward their chest. If you approach a man, you're taught to extend your arm a little lower. The psychology being that they're more likely to grab the product and not ignore you if you're extending something toward a more sensitive area.
Once they grab it, you then want to get them back to the booth, where all of the products are. So you turn and burn. You turn around and quickly retreat to your booth, confident they will be close behind. Eventually you get to the price points. You state the higher retail price in dollars and qualify the customer. In other words, get them to agree that the high price is actually decent to begin with. Then you hit them with the lower wholesale price in bucks to psychologically stress the deal and to make it seem like they aren't spending dollars.
If I said to someone, gosh, gas was $20 today, or if I was like, oh man, gas was just 20 bucks. Obviously the connotation is very different using the exact same number. Normally this retails for $100. Today, just 59 bucks.
You then assume the sale, asking how many they need.
My transition is obviously, that's why everyone right now has been grabbing up 4 and 5 sets, thinking ahead for all the gifts they're gonna need in the next 6 months. So we've got holidays, charity auctions, teachers appreciation gifts.
If they say no or are unsure, you lay on the indifference. It's totally up to you. We are only here once a year and I don't want you to miss out. You make one last stab at impulse by using a reference. We had a lady earlier grab 6 bundles because she wanted to knock some holiday gifts off her shopping list early. Did you need to grab 6 like her or just the one today?
Of course, someone's going to be excited about the product. We know that if someone has an extra $100 or $150 in their wallet, they're gonna go home with it. So the assume the sale is, I know you need the one. Did you need 7 like the last lady or just a few before we leave today?
There is no last lady or guy. Last lady, last guy, they'll just throw in whatever gender depending on the gender of the customer they're speaking to. But they just make it up. It's this last guy, or for this holiday, they purchased it for this occasion. But if you believe the law of averages theory that they teach you, literally the last guy or last person they spoke to more than likely walked right past them and didn't even bother to stop for the pitch.
That's why we had a lady earlier today. She went ahead and stacked up with 10 sets. She was so smart. She was going to section out each piece and give it as a holiday gift. So that was less than $30 per person on their holiday shopping. Literally knocked out the entire list in one fell swoop. I know, she didn't even have to wait in line for all the holiday savings, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, I'm sure you can think of at least 5 or 6 people on your holiday list that you don't want to spend more than $30 on this holiday season. Did you need to stack up with 10 sets like her and get all of the holiday shopping done, or did you just need a few so you can knock it out today?
And they're gonna tell you everyone's been grabbing them and they've been grabbing up multiple sets for this holiday and this gift idea and all those sorts of things. No, they haven't. That's just, they call it the greed factor. You know, everyone's doing it, you should do it, you don't want to be the only person who doesn't do it. But for most of those campaigns, if they sell 10, 15 sets a day, they've already hit or exceeded the national average. If you get another no, this is your 2 no's and a go. You end the conversation and start all over again with a new customer.
And once we've gotten 2 no's and a go, then it's our opportunity to close the conversation, move on to someone else so we can create that brand awareness with every other person that's in the store.
This is the closing circle, and you do this hundreds of times a day.
When they gave us a product, I was always told, like, if I have a question to ask. And when I asked about a product, well, what if this happens? Or how do we know this really works? It was never no, you just believe in the product, but I need to know why, you know? I want to feel it, I want to know. So I feel like if someone has to tell me what to say to sell a product, then you can't tell me to just believe in it. If that, you get what I'm saying? It should post like sell for itself. And if it's really that good, then it can, you know, they kind of showed us ways to maneuver people. And then although they said to not pressure nobody, but then some of the techniques that we had was to, you know, pressure people. I didn't like that. And even to this day, if I go to Sam's Club or, you know, Walmart and people are doing what I used to do, they're very like, hey, come on, well, just try it. I'm like, you know, chill. I don't like that.
Another common method to get people to buy things is to get them together in a group and get one person so excited about buying the product, they impulse everybody else around them to buy it.
All you really need is one excited person. One person impulses the rest of the crowd. So that's all I needed. If I couldn't find that one person, then I knew I had to speed through that process.
So how do you get busy and uninterested people over to listen to a presentation about a product you are trying to sell? You offer them something free.
In less than 2 minutes, we will be handing out brand new free gifts to each and every adult shopper in the store today.
Everybody has one. We'll wave them around and celebrate. Hooray. Pop quiz. This is item number 1. What's the number of my next item? 2. You get a second one for being so smart.
The crowd has now been rewarded for their attendance, so you hook them into the show.
Who here has glasses? Sunglasses?
Okay, what color's your card? Black. Perfect. Spray this on your card.
You ask questions to plant the seed of a need for the product in the minds of the crowd. The more questions a person answers affirmatively, the more they see themselves finding use out of that product, and it makes coming over for the free gift even more worthwhile.
Does anybody go hiking or in the park or picnicking, tailgating, barbecues, okay?
Raising the hand up high when asking for a response is a psychological tool to get a maximum number of responses. If people can relate to the question and they see you raising your hand, they will do the same, which will then get other people around them to do the same. Customer see, customer do. It's all a matter of building impulse for the close and the jam, where at least one more item is jammed into the deal to make it even harder to turn down.
This next part, we're not allowed to advertise into the entire store because honestly, we don't have enough of these left. So once they're gone, they're gone.
In the store, we have them. They won't be here after today. It's the last day we're running out. But I'm not allowed to cut the price.
I can't touch the price on these. However, we had a shipment of these that we're not shipping back because we're leaving soon. So I asked my manager what we should do with these. What she told me to do is, instead of shipping them back in, since we're here right now, those of you that let me know right now that they want to pick up the regular set.
What they want me to do is you take home the iPod White for $40, and then I'm allowed to give you the electric green.
For that $39. while we have a handful of these left, we get to go ahead and include the $80 neck and shoulder pack in the set as a gift as well.
And the $40 Robin's Egg Blue along with it. And then yeah, as long as we have extra, everybody who's here who lets me know now, they let me give you one over there, they let me give you the Big Bird Yellow and the $40 Jet Black along with it. So yeah, all 5 for $40 to get your Christmas shopping done. So let me know now while we have them so you get those. So you needed one, you want one?
If it all sounds like one of those late night call right now before the offer expires infomercials, you're right. Remember that whole as long as we have extra and we only have a few of these left charade? Owners plan for thousands of dollars of inventory per day. And since most shows last between 6 to 12 days, there is usually at least one entire pallet of products in the back of the store, out of the public eye. And if after grabbing your product, a customer happens to change their mind and leaves the store without purchasing it, you didn't use your systems well enough. If you encounter a rude customer, it's because of your approach to them. You are taught to always point your finger toward yourself, and the owners let you know it. One of my primary areas was on the south side of Chicago, which is a predominantly low-income area. And we would go into these stores and people would come up to us all day and say, hey, that's a really cool product, I just can't afford it. And I'm supposed to be the one to convince them, hey, you need this $40 kitchen novelty, not the groceries you came here to buy or the medicine that you need. And if I didn't do that for enough people, then I didn't do my job well enough. And of course, if you tell your owner, well, they couldn't afford it, everyone's on a fixed income, they'll just tell you, oh, you're just making excuses.
And also, any of the stuff that we were selling, you could have gotten online for cheaper.
I can tell you what an inventory cost on this shit is that they sell for $40 is about $6. That's what I can tell you that they charge us. So I can only imagine what it actually costs to make, if that helps. Like, I mean, an iron, I think, was $8.50 total to us, inventory. And that doesn't include all the 50 cents worth of bullshit that you get with it.
Our number one goal is to create the exposure and the branding for the client. We know that our goal is really the exposure of the client.
Because at the end of the day, when we talk to our clients and we start the relationship with them,
what the business doesn't tell you about their clients is that nearly every product you are selling is owned by them, the parent company. So when they say, you're creating awareness for the client, or we're helping our clients, you're literally just helping the parent company make more money. The company that already owns you and owns all the owners.
Most of the things that we sold were frivolous crap. It was infomercial stuff that, you don't need. Like, you've probably got something else in your house that can fulfill that purpose perfectly well. There were times when I felt, okay, hey, I gave you something that you can use. But there were definitely other times where I knew that I was just suckering people. They were just impulsive. They knew that they didn't need it. You don't need 3 whisks. Like, there's no reason for you to have 3 of these fancy whisks. Or to buy a bunch of them to give to your relatives so they can re-gift them later.
The towel, I actually use that at my job during the hot summer days. And it sucks. Like, it wipes the sweat off pretty good, but I mean, it doesn't really keep you cool. The whisk, man, yeah, that only lasted during demo with milk. I took that home, tried to mash potatoes like I used to say it did. It didn't.
At times you may feel like you're selling just some overpriced garbage, but I wouldn't say that all of the products. The flat iron with the hair campaigns, I still use it. Love them. So some products, the vibration speakers, they're really nice products.
It really all depends. The one that I was a national mentor for was a car wax product, and that could also be used in the kitchen and the home, and I thought that was a phenomenal product. It was made in the United States. It worked really well. I still actually have some in my own home, which was great, and it made it easier for me to sell that product because I personally believed in it. But then there's these super cheap products that are made in China and didn't even work.
They weren't very useful. I mean, the speaker were cool. They were cool. That's what they were. If you were into gadgets and having, the latest thing or the newest thing, it was great. But for a more practical use, Not really.
I would say the best product I had was that pizza. Yeah. I was able to eat it.
I thought it was easy to sell that just because people were hungry.
Yeah, that was easy, but the flat irons and the massage stuff, some of that stuff wouldn't even work. It wasn't worth the money. And I would say deceiving, yeah, because we had to do certain techniques to keep it warm. You get what I'm saying? But if we're advertising that this supposed to last long and stuff, it should just work.
The ultimate goal advertised by this business is entrepreneurship and owning your own business. After a year of selling enough stuff and duplicating yourself to enough people on your team, you have the opportunity to break off into your own company and become the owner. You run the morning meetings, conduct interviews, and hire marketing reps, and do the easy work of sitting in the office and running national conference calls, and maybe take off by noon. You will likely make 6 figures a year, and that will increase as you hire more people to increase the number of shows you run, while you sit back and eventually accumulate unthinkable wealth with minimal work. This is how ownership is sold in every morning meeting, leaders meeting, and national leaders conference. At its best, it's problematic. At its worst, it's an outright lie.
They'll tell you you have your own business. They say you're going to have this business, this is going to be your own business, this is your own office. But the truth of the matter is that is not yours. That is never yours. It is never going to be yours. You will always, always be an employee. But you're going to become an employee with greater degree of responsibility.
I reached out to nearly a dozen former owners to learn about their experiences, and most of them gave me the same response: silence. 2 agreed to be interviewed.
As a manager, all you really are is an entry-level person on a bigger scale, because everything starts over again. Now you're learning a different system for how to manage your crew, how to pick and choose different products or locations you're going to be at.
It's a change, definitely. I went from, kind of doing all my own stuff and being free and wild and single to, for 9 months I worked every weekend and no one ever saw me, and I kind of vanished off the face of the earth from, all my friends. And they were like, it was cool. It was just like, hey, I was actually good enough at something to get promoted. I'm going to run my own show. Obviously, this hard work has paid off. It was definitely an awesome feeling. They did a great job of promoting it and sensationalizing it for sure.
Only a small handful of individuals ever reach the point of being so successful that they can essentially control everything with minimal work. But that's the outcome you are always sold.
I felt like there was always something I had to do, no matter what. Every Saturday was something, or every Sunday was a teardown, or there was always a problem. And, I feel like there was never, even no matter how many shows you ran, you were always 3 people short. It didn't matter if I had 8 shows, 15 shows, I was always 3 people short, where I always had to do shit myself. And it was always a 24/7 gig.
As an owner, you are responsible for scheduling and filling in for people who call off. You are responsible for all inventory and for finding extra when you run out. You are responsible for building your team leaders into managers and handling their day breakdowns, one-on-ones, and leaders meetings.
And frankly, an unfair compensation for the amount of work you have to put in. Even Tyshawn, who was making the most money in the office, the amount of work that he had to put in and the way that he had to dismiss his wife and his children and put his life on the back burner in order to chase this dream of maybe, maybe I'm going to make a bunch of money selling useless crap to people. It was damaging to him. It's damaging to anyone's psyche who's involved in it.
Was ownership what you expected it would be?
No, it wasn't. It was definitely a lot more hours than I expected. From a entry-level position, all you really see is the manager do a morning meeting and, then they do interviews. It looks like their day's over. But from when you actually get there, it's, okay, now I have a leadership meeting, a morning meeting, interviews, and then I go to the field. And then after that, I have another meeting with a newcomer. I think money-wise, it kind of equated to what they said, but as far as the hours you put in, I don't think they really explained that in depth.
I think what they promise in Perot is not what you get, because it's pretty much like, hey, you get into management, you're going to bring this team with you, and you're going to grow and make 100 G's, and I think that was kind of how it was. you know, how they promote it to you. And then you realize that it was you and two people moving across the country running two shows, and it's not necessarily how it works. You learn quickly that two shows don't pay for shit.
As an owner, you are constantly being monitored, influenced, and sometimes disciplined by your promoting owner, the regional and national consultants, and the executives of the parent company.
Every single one of those offices also needs to follow a regional script. So when we were at, you know, the leadership conference and we were writing up or editing, you know, some of like the national marketing materials and the national marketing pamphlets, I go, national? Like, really, what was this about everybody having their own business and having independence? So some of the job titles of people there, I think, are very telling and might be, you know, helpful because they had people who were regional managers.
It was definitely an agenda that swapped, and whatever Larissa and Mike were promoting week in and week out. And if I ever went back and probably took notes on some shit, but I usually just tuned out the conference calls because they were bullshit because I knew that. But I mean, there is so much random bullshit in 3 years that the propaganda changed over and over again to one thing. You know, 1 week it was sales, 1 week it was recruiting, 1 week it was fired everybody. And then, they changed shit from week to week. But I would say Larissa and Mike, whatever bullshit they wanted to promote for the week is what was popular. And that's kind of how we ran everything. And it trickled down from there down, basically.
And these are the national consultants.
Yes.
That's what they're called. Okay.
Yes. They're not afraid to call you out. Like they would definitely post good, bad, and ugly. Like, you know, it wasn't like, hey, we had this owner. Like, you knew you were being talked about. Like, if it was on a call, hey, I had this guy that did this. You're like, oh, shit, that's me. But it was always, I mean, it was more like the message was never consistent. They never had like, hey, we're going to focus on this. It's like, oh, man, hey, Steve over in Albuquerque did this shit. Let's talk about this week. And then 2 weeks later, Steve got fired and quit the business.
And your owner is no longer in business either, I don't believe, from what I...
2 out of the 3 are no longer in business. So she won a Rookie Manager of the Year her first year due to her team that had followed her. She promoted somebody out who's actually still in the business. And then she basically got scolded by some of the higher ups because she wanted to have the work-life balance that was always promised to her. And then as soon as it came out that like, hey, you can't be taking this like weekend vacation here, or you can't be doing this whenever you want. You have a business to run. She was like, you know what? This isn't really what I signed up for. This isn't what you guys told me. So she backed out as well.
At the Dallas leadership conferences specifically, where ownership is sold in the most blatant and aggressive manner, the true hierarchy of the business is clearly evident.
Basically, during this entire presentation for 3 days out in Texas, they were basically hyping up the new Rookie Owner of the Year. Hoorah. She comes on, she talks about her life, her story, her come up, and how it comes to be was, the exact question I can't actually remember, but it was basically saying, summarizing, if it's your day off, you can basically turn off your phone. And then towards the end, you were able to ask questions. So I asked the question, how can you turn off your phone when you have to be on call? Like, you have to be on call for your new people to basically give you a phone call for how their day went. You gotta break it down. You gotta go to team meetings. You gotta go to team nights. You gotta hold meetings. And every single day you have off, you are still entitled to work for this company. And if you don't, it gets shunned upon. And basically, as she was about to answer that question, the head honcho vice president, I guess she was, right?
Oh, yeah,
So she comes over, hurries up, takes her off the stage, and basically have a little sit-down conversation. As I'm walking out of there, like, yeah, I just ruffled some feathers. For the most part, I could just imagine what the conversation was, though.
You know, if you did what they wanted and played by their rules, they would give you certain leverage. But if you didn't, they let you run your own business, but you were kind of like on your own. You know, they were like, hey, no, don't talk to this guy. He doesn't do this, or, you know, like they wouldn't promote you. Where you could be a shitty half-assed owner, but if you sat there and, you know, sniffed Larissa's farts, then they'd be like, oh, this chick's awesome, blah, blah, blah. Versus I could have 3 times the sales as that chick, but because I don't like call Larissa 3 times a day and ask her shit, then I'm a shitty owner. No one should network with me. And that was the thing. Yes, you ran your own business as long as you were successful, but if you ever needed help or wanted somebody else, then they hold that against you because you weren't playing by their rules.
We're teaching you all of these fundamentals at no cost to you. In fact, on top of that, you're getting paid for this training process. So not only are you walking home with a master's in business, but you're also walking home with a practical application and some money in your pocket. So there's definitely two different schools of thought when it comes to this. There's the person that, invests maybe 5-10 hours maximum in the actual business school portion. They're like half there. They're putting in, 80%. And they're the person that walks, into the events and they're working like 30 hours in the events. They're, just kind of halfway there, right? And they're the person that's working a total 40-hour work week. And that's the person that probably at the end of the day, it's gonna take them anywhere from 10 to 12, months to really go through this training process, because they're probably not really over-investing their time. And then there's the person that looks at business school like it's gold, right? They over-invest their time. They spend, 10, probably more like 15 hours a week going above and beyond, practice pitching with intensity, right? Really, studying and taking notes on everything, pulling out a piece of paper and a notebook every opportunity they get, rather than just kind of halfway listening to things, right? And then they go into the events and they work a full 40 hours in the events, because they understand that the more they practice and the more they try, the better they're gonna get. And that's the person that might be working, 50, 55 hours a week working, right? But that's the person that's gonna get through the training process in probably 6 to 7 months.
Working in this industry, there are long hours and not a lot of money when you're at the bottom of the totem pole. But you do see the growth opportunities potential, but that's not for the bulk of those who go into this industry. In sales, this industry has one of the highest turnover ratios of any I've done research on.
The unorthodoxy of the office atmosphere is a pretty telltale sign you have stumbled into the slave circle. But if you want to gather some evidence before showing up to the office, seek out some online company reviews. Just like anything on the internet, you have to take each review with a grain of salt. Unfortunately, this is one of the main ways these companies dismiss negative internet reviews. If somebody brings up negative reviews, you dismiss them with the proper response, as taught in the leaders' meetings. Anyone can write anything they want on the internet. The more exposure and the bigger our company gets, the more likely there will be something negative. I would put more stock in our clients. Disregarding this nonsense, here are some things to look for when scouting internet feedback. If you do enough research, you will find patterns. On the website Glassdoor, you will find the standard complaints: long hours, minimum wage, and low pay. You will also find more divisive complaints. The place is a scam. It isn't a legitimate place of business. You will find some positive reviews by satisfied employees, but you will also see many exaggerated, completely over-the-top positive reviews. As a rep, you are repeatedly encouraged by owners to create positive reviews about the company, while in the same breath taught to dismiss the negative ones. You can usually spot these posts because they use the same technique of following the script, repeating the language taught in the business, and using very similar wording in each review. This particular owner seems to have made an adamant request for positive feedback in mid-November, as an unusual number of positive reviews posted shortly after. If you look hard enough, you will find clear mentions of the 3 commandments. These always positive employees look down upon those who are not in the business. They see what they do as what normal people won't understand. This opportunity is not for the average 9-to-5 person who is content making $25K for the next 10 years. At jobs where all people do is screw around on the internet all day. And if you were in this business and quit, you failed. because you didn't put in enough effort. They resort to name-calling when discussing people who have left negative reviews. Any element of negativity is seen as unacceptable. Some companies will personally respond to negative reviews. They follow the script as well. We also offer a variety of compensation plans that are based on several factors.
We do also offer multiple compensation plans that are determined based on the initial hiring
We
process.
also offer a variety of positions that are based on several factors determined during the initial hiring process.
A few companies have gone out of their way to state that they are reputable and ethical, and operate legally and ethically within state labor laws, still trying to sell themselves. Beware of jobs advertised as event marketing, event coordinator, marketing coordinator, event manager, campaign manager, entry-level marketing, management training, marketing assistant, entry-level customer service, and many, many others with similar wording. They are fancy names for the same job, standing in a store and selling stuff, with an opportunity for management. Featured on each company's website and social media pages are similar generic graphics and stock photos. You will find images of random people in corporate boardroom-type environments that have nothing to do with the company. You will see similar stock graphics that advertise each company is hiring and looking for special people, when in fact, they're always hiring and looking for anybody. Actual photos of these companies are always happy. They show reps who love being in the field and are all smiles to be at the morning meeting. Team nights, holiday parties, never-ending socializing and good times. And most prominently, snapshots from the annual owner's vacation, an all-expenses-paid trip for owners and top leaders to some beautiful tropical location with plenty of fun and relaxation, bountiful awards, and hobnobbing with the literal only handful of people who actually have made millions of dollars from this business. The people at the top. Upon further exploration, you may come across a few press releases detailing the company's plans for the future. These press releases will usually feature a few quotes from the owner, but one thing you won't find is a last name. Just a person who mysteriously gives only their first name in what is supposed to be perceived as a reputable dissemination to the media. Sometimes you won't see a name at all, just a quote from the elusive firm president. Some of these companies' pages display a seal identifying themselves as being verified by Fair Business Report and acclaimed as one of Fair Business Report's top places to work. This sounds like it could be a way to identify legitimate businesses, but upon several internet searches of the phrase Fair Business Report, the only companies that have ever been recognized by this obscure group are companies that belong to this marketing circle. Researching the websites and social media pages of every single one of these award-winning companies results in the same generic stock photos, the same images of smiling team leaders, and the same gatherings at the same leadership conferences. Press releases by these companies announcing they've been awarded one of the top places to work all feature quotes by the CEO or company president, who once again lacks a last name. Conveniently, negative reviews are impossible to find on Fair Business Report. Very strange, since all of these companies have a decent split of positive and negative reviews on their much more reputable Glassdoor pages. As well, the Fair Business Report reviews include wording that should look pretty familiar by now.
Management training program, right? Worst job, best opportunity. 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 Opportunity.
We can only conclude, based on the evidence, that Fair Business Report is just a front. Another method used by this business to improve its internet image, to cover its tracks, to dismiss negative critiques of their methods, and to continue to sucker people in to a life of sales servitude.
I wouldn't want to say it's kind of like a pyramid thing, you know, But what didn't make sense to me is our boss, she said she was working for a company, but the company gave her X amount of money to start her own company, but we're all connected. And I'm still confused.
It functions as basically a giant pyramid scheme. It's an MLM, multi-level marketing scheme, which they say is not the same thing as a pyramid scheme, but the people who really do benefit from it are the people who got on early and the people who are willing to step on as many other people as they can to get ahead.
I feel like I've been taught and trained so many different ways of why it's not a pyramid scheme that you almost kind of start to believe it after a while. But then once you're have stepped away from it for almost 2 years now that I've been away from it. It's it's very pyramid scheme. I've even seen some of these other multi-level marketing, you build a team, you sell a product, you promote it to your Facebook friends and get them to try a patch or a face cream or a workout, some kind of something. It's basically the same thing, except you're going in front of a group of strangers in person and just have a bigger client base to back your bullshit.
Many of the criticisms of these companies involve accusations of being a pyramid scheme. As it was taught to me in multiple leaders' meetings, if somebody mentions the word pyramid, you immediately rebuke them and put them on their back foot by asking, "Do you know what a pyramid strategy is?" After all, strategy sounds a lot better than scheme.
Obviously, the connotation is very different.
You then lay out a carefully scripted case based largely on semantics and technicalities as to why what you're doing is not a pyramid scheme. I don't make money off hiring you. Technically, no. But recruiting a certain number of people is a necessity to get you to ownership, where you do make more money. We don't recruit friends and family. This is very hypocritical. It's not a requirement, but it's definitely recommended. In one particular meeting, the owner breaks down explicitly how to go about recruiting people you know, and tells you how this is the fastest way to build your team and move through the program. Never mind if one of them quits and harbors resentment against you, because what's the value of a social relationship if it doesn't relate to the business? I don't have to buy any inventory. While it's true recruits don't have to buy any products, what about all the time and energy you put in without compensation? Your physical and mental health?
It relies on high turnover. It relies on desperation. It relies on making sure that people are so dependent and so frightened of losing this that they are willing to accept an untenable situation and are willing to accept long hours, working for free, unfair compensation, a business in which people will actively tell you that your friendships and your relationships should be less important than the business's bottom line.
I'll admit, the first time I was sold this script, I bought it wholeheartedly. I actually felt relief and thought, okay, good, this isn't a scheme, this is legit. But in the How Stuff Works article, How Pyramid Schemes Work, David Roos identifies some striking similarities between pyramid schemes and this marketing circle. In this context, each owner would be the distributor, and the leaders and entry-level reps would be the recruits. The distributor gets a percentage of each unit that's sold. When you're the owner, you make 40% on the product sold. So if a rep in the store sells $1,000 worth of product in a day, they might make around $180. The owner makes at least $400. The recruits are told that the fastest way to make money isn't by selling products, but by recruiting more people. Sound familiar? Sales is advertised as only being a small part of the job. You're not sellers, you're promoters. But if you recruit people to apply for the opportunity, train them, and build enough of them into team leaders, then you get into ownership, and your commission rate jumps from 18% to 40%. The distributor also gets a percent of each product that any of their recruits sells. So let's say an owner promotes out one of their top leaders to open their own office. The new owner makes the 40% off all the products their recruits sell. but the new owner's promoting owner also gets a percentage of what the new office sells. With every person the promoting owner promotes to ownership, they get an additional percentage of all products those new offices sell. But since none of the team leaders and entry-level reps directly invest any money, and hence do not lose any invested money if they quit, this is not technically a pyramid scheme. But what about a multi-level marketing operation? MLMs are systems where individuals sell products to their friends, family members, and coworkers, get them to become distributors of those products themselves, and have them continue to recruit other distributors to sell the same products. Many of them are pyramid-shaped. A 1979 Federal Trade Commission ruling regarding the Amway Corporation opened the door for companies to operate as legal MLMs, while not technically being pyramid schemes. They held that a corporation is not a pyramid scheme if the company does not pay distributors simply for recruiting new salespeople. New salespeople are not required to purchase inventory. Distributors made money from the direct sales of products to customers. I doubt it's a coincidence that the beginnings of this marketing circle can be traced back to 1981, just 2 years after the FTC ruling. In his report, What About This One?, Robert Fitzpatrick, president of an organization named Pyramid Scheme Alert, identifies clear characteristics of an MLM business operation. The endless chain. MLMs organize this process into ranks of 4 or more, with complex rules and pay schedule that leverage the ever-extending and ever-expanding pyramid.
And how do I get from phase 1 to phase 2, from phase 2 to phase 3, from phase 3 to phase 4?
Money goes to the top. In addition to each promoting owner making a percentage of their new owner's profit, each regional and national consultant also receives a percentage of the profit from every office or region they oversee. Rewards are based on recruiting. The bottom ranks of the chain, which include the great majority of all participants, will not make a profit. As they fail and quit, they are replaced by new hopefuls, and so it goes.
All of the people who were at that leadership conference who were speaking positively of it and who said that it was, oh, it changed my life, it was amazing, it's the best thing ever, not a single one of them addressed why we have such a massive turnover rate. Why are so many people coming into this job and failing? It was treated as though there's just some inherent weakness in them, as though whenever someone left, it was your failure, you just couldn't hack it, you couldn't deal with the challenges, and that's why I hate that idea of everything's just a challenge.
In an interview with Fitzpatrick, author and former Amway rep Eric Scheibler discusses some of the promises that MLMs make to their recruits. The similarities to this marketing circle are stunning.
Often the recruiters talk about entrepreneurship, personal business ownership, freedom, personal freedom, time freedom, the ability to develop long-term permanent residual income.
The presentations themselves, which are exciting, that get people thinking about being wealthy and independent and free of all the pressures of debts and so on, they don't tell you the hard data, the loss rates, the dropout rates, the costs, and so on that you're going to incur.
You're filled with analogies and face-to-face meetings with people who allegedly started with nothing, and some did, and now, drive Lamborghinis and Ferraris and have a home at the shore, and they all talk about starting right where you did, with a ton of bills and a lot of stress and just a hope that somehow they could succeed and someone would help them and mentor them. You see new people coming up being recognized at different levels, and everyone's very well dressed and happy and enthusiastic, and there may be thousands or tens of thousands of people in this meeting, and you believe, wow, I'm part of something that's big, that's growing, that everybody's winning with. And what you don't realize is virtually everyone in the audience is losing money, and they're just part of a wave of human inventory that is sweeping through every 12 months through the same business.
The vast majority are always going to be in the bottom ranks, and that's actually where you are. So it's a very deceptive, very tricky model, this pyramid chain, endless chain. If this presentation is being made to you on the basis of fear or desperation, oh, you're a nurse? Oh, you'll never be wealthy at that. A school teacher? Ah, that's a loser's job. working for a big corporation, all you're doing is making the bosses wealthy. Things like that, to degrade real opportunities that are out there.
The same techniques used to get people to sell products to people they know and recruit them into their independent business are used here. Advertising the same heavenly dream of being an entrepreneur, working from home, setting your own hours, and having more money than you will ever need to live the lifestyle that everyone wants, and still be someone else's employee. And it works. Making it to owner and successfully managing the sellers of the parent company's products has allowed many people to live comfortably. But for the massive financial gains and total personal freedom constantly promoted in daily morning atmosphere and at Dallas leadership conferences, well, that has proven true for only a very tiny, minuscule few.
When, everybody is looking at the the top dogs in the company and going, look how much money they have, I can get there one day. And when Larry was giving these speeches about, like, I started on the streets, knocking on doors, going door to door, selling things. Well, yeah, but you're not telling the whole story. Like, you're not mentioning all of the, you're not mentioning the fact that you are at the top of a series of people who are controlling different regions, in addition to being at the top of people who own different warehouses and production facilities. And then all of these people who are in charge of these different regions are then in charge of making sure that all of these sub-offices that everyone considers their own business are operating within the parameters of the greater office. And that's why we had to sell so much stupid shit.
Defining the slave circle as a pyramid scheme or an MLM may not be too important, however, considering what these types of business operations seem to truly represent.
These companies employ some very sophisticated pressure tactics, persuasion tactics, usually involving group dynamics. You are joining into something, but you can be literally swept up in it.
People telling you how wonderful you are and how much opportunity you have, and who doesn't want to hear that? And then you're told to ignore outside sources of information, particularly anything that may be critical to the group dynamic.
Focus only on the positive.
Yes.
Imagine success.
Yeah, cut out negative.
Success.
Avoid negative people. Avoid stinking thinking.
What is created is a kind of we versus they. We being the people in the organization, in the company, and anybody outside is to be treated as a kind of alien or threat or maybe a hindrance to your success. The only people that you should be listening to, talking with, and so on are inside the organization. You also hear these catchwords, these phrases used over and over again. They seem to make such sense in the context of that group setting. They seem to dispel any thought of critique or analysis. You sort of end up following this amazing movement that you feel swept up in. We're really talking about a kind of mind control here. No accident that these schemes are often referred to as cults.
Cult Watch identifies commercial cults as cults of greed, where if you follow their special program for success, then you will become very rich. Often they will hold up their leader as an example and explain that if you do what he or she says, then you will be successful too.
They use these guys, basically comedy guys, get the girls like, hey, yeah, get excited, you can make a lot of money. And then they see these other girls wearing Chanel, getting excited for, oh, I drive a Beamer, I got a house, I got a boat, I live next to Kobe Bryant. It's just a pipe dream that's really, to me, I have never ever really seen it. And I've went to, how many owners? Probably 3 different owners. And yeah, I don't think they're still with them.
Cult expert Steve Hassan, the founding director of the Freedom of Mind Resource Center, developed the BITE model to describe how cults control the behavior, thoughts, and emotions of an individual, as well as the amount and types of information they are allowed to receive. Out of 35 control methods identified in the model, this business practices no fewer than 14. Pyramid Scheme Alert President Robert Fitzpatrick discusses economic cults, whereas each cult grotesquely distorts Main Street capitalism and achieving financial success into a radical ideology requiring blind belief and total obedience to the dear leaders. It makes financial success appear as a heaven on earth and presents recruiting for the MLM as the only pathway to this salvation. It perverts the work ethic and converts the idea of personal freedom into slavish subservience. And these individually owned companies are literally everywhere. The Devil Corp website contains the names of over 800 companies that the site deems as likely suspects. And new companies are opening every year in every corner of the world.
Our goal is to be able to open up more of these companies across the country, because if I say to client A, hey, I can run 30 shows every single day versus 300 shows every single day, obviously the value for them is a lot higher the more markets that we can have these shows running in.
A simple internet search of the concepts discussed in this film will yield websites, blogs, and videos detailing so many people's similar experiences in this unending circle of sales slavery, which honestly and truly benefits only a small handful of people at the very top of the pyramid.
The guy who owns the whole shebang, I had a brief opportunity to talk to him when we were at the leadership conference. And I asked him, because it was important to me, I asked him, how do you justify the way people are treated? Like, how do you look at this giant empire that you've created, this business that you've created, and go to sleep at night knowing what it does to people's lives? And he misconstrued my question as one about the fact that all of our products are produced in China, which is totally a separate issue, also an issue. And his response was very telling, I think, because it didn't at all address the people. He said, oh, well, you know, I can't help that, it's business. We need to get the products from the place where we can get them the cheapest. And if they start making them in the US for as cheap as they can make them in China, then we'll start buying from the US. And for that to happen, for that kind of corporate dream, and this is what the people who are at the top of the company, this is what they want. For that to happen, workers in the United States would have to be paid as low wages as workers in China. And I think that at the end of the day, it is in only the interest of the owner for this business to even exist. I don't think that it is in anyone else's interest, certainly not society's, because there's no concern and no regard shown for any individual people, not the people you're selling to, not the people you're hiring, not the people you're working for. None of these individuals are viewed as human beings in the context of the business. And that whole situation where you've got a bunch of old people and, you know, college kids who are desperate to get some kind of experience or to make some kind of money, and you're sitting there telling them something that you know is a lie. Like, you know that 99% of these people aren't going to make it fucking anywhere, but you're like, yeah, no, it'll be great, you know, just fucking work harder, just do it a little harder.
I look back, there was 96 managers when I started, there's 84 when I quit, and I think 12 of them were still there 3 years later. I mean, 99.9% of people fail. It's not designed to be long-term efficient, and of those 12 people, I think 8 of them are regional managers, so they've been here forever.
This was my world for 15 months. My days began around 6 a.m. Since I lived about 45 minutes from the office and had to deal with rush hour traffic, I would be on the road from at least 7:15 to 8:30. If the weather was perfect and there were no traffic collisions, I would get to the office on time. During my final 2 months, I was working at least 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, plus a commute of at least 2.5 hours. I once worked unscheduled day-long solo shifts on 11 consecutive days. By the 11th day, I could barely stand for 30 minutes at a time. And during my one-on-one with my owner the next day, I came up with some feeling sick excuse as to why my sales were so poor. Since I was being groomed for ownership, I was also expected to come in at 7 a.m. on my day off to make preparations for the upcoming week's events. I was physically exhausted, and I felt mentally helpless. I lost over 30 pounds. I was as close as you could be to getting divorced. I had no relationship with any friends or family. The highlight of my day was getting home every night, and after finishing all the breakdowns with my team members and owner, I got to spend about an hour awake with my wife before completely blacking out. I would wake up every morning around 5, freaking out that I had slept in and would be late. Then I would literally thank God that I had another precious hour of sleep before beginning another day, identical to the last and identical to the next. I kept finding ways to defend this business every time someone asked me, "Why don't you look for another job?" "It will all pay off," I used to say. "If I bust my ass now, it'll be easy street later." Eventually, I couldn't take anymore, and I spent a large portion of my time in the field searching for and applying for other jobs. About a week before I left, I therapeutically journaled in the back of one of my many notebooks of indoctrinations and propaganda just how hopelessly stuck I felt. If I had another job opportunity lined up, I would be gone tomorrow. I know I have to work, but at what point can I stop mentally torturing myself with something I have lost all interest in and grown to loathe? I'm only still here because I have nothing else, and we have tons of never-ending bills. I guess you could say I had lost my attitude.
For a while, I got caught up in the promises of it, and I think that it was because I was pretty hard off.
It becomes like robotic. You become you become that job. You don't have even though if you do have an off day, you're still that job.
It sort of drags you in to such a great extent that you lose the ability to think critically about what you're doing every day on the job. Because when you're putting in, 60, 70, 80-hour weeks, and when you're driving constantly and you've got to go to the morning meeting, and then you got to drive 2 hours to get to the other place, and then you have to work there for the full shift, and then you have to go back, and then you have to go to go drop off stuff at the different places, and you're getting sent to all of these different states every couple weeks, it becomes something that you just do. It becomes a habit.
We get into the field. Sometimes it's a 6-hour shift, sometimes it's 8. If we're in Costco, we get the opportunity to work like a full 10-hour day, which is really exciting for building stamina, right?
It's like on the one hand, I need to make money and I'm not sure how quickly I can get another job, and there's rent and there's bills and there's the car payment, and you're sort of trapped in that money pit. But on the other hand, I was miserable. And I was working myself to death. You start to grind. I started getting sick a lot. I started smoking cigarettes, which I didn't do before.
I received a lot of negative feedback from those I was close with, encouraging me to get out, which, with my personality, was something that made me want to just succeed at it and go as far as I could. Not only to prove people wrong, but to prove to myself that I didn't make a wrong choice in going with this business.
So how did you respond to that? Because I know that in the business, you're pretty much encouraged to distance yourself from negative feedback. How did you respond to that?
You can't distance yourself from family, so that was difficult. But I, took what they said with a grain of salt because they weren't the ones in the experience and seeing it firsthand.
But here's when I knew it was time to get out, is when you start seeing reviews about your company and they're shitty reviews, but they're not false. Granted, I spin it better, but at the end of the day, they're not wrong. That's exactly what we do. And when you look at it written by somebody else, to realize if you actually packaged and presented what we did, and I guess that's probably my biggest thing is, if we were just honest and upfront, will we hire very many people? Absolutely fucking not. If I was like, hey dude, come sell shit in Sam's Club for a year, you might make 100 G's next year, we probably wouldn't fucking hire anybody.
I mean, the money, it was great, but at the same time, I personally, I wanted my life back. I felt disconnected from my family. I was putting in way too many hours, and the money was good, but it didn't equal to the amount of hours that I put in.
When you speak negatively of a cult, the members of that cult will defend it, just as the owners and employees of this business system defend their companies. I can already hear what they're saying. We are nothing but disgruntled former employees, failures, angry that we didn't have what it takes, stuck in our 5-day-a-week jobs with no control over our schedules, hopelessly making less than millions, not willing to work hard enough to achieve our goals or realize our dreams. Looked down upon by a group of idealists, blinded by a cult mentality. nearly all of whom will never come close to being millionaires in the slave circle, and who will likely find themselves unemployed within the next few months, searching for that stable job they so repeatedly and vehemently scorned.
Their day will come, and they will be in the same position we are on the outside looking in.
Honestly, I have a bunch of people who still reach out to me that got out of the business after I did, who are also some of those failures. They're like, man, I should have gotten out so much earlier. I should have left when you left. Man, how did you stay in that long? I only stayed in for 6 months. And honestly, it was just like a means to an end at that time. And hey, I'll chalk it up to what it is. It looks great on my resume. And I feel like I'm living a better, happier life right now. I mean, granted, I'm not doing probably like the great thing where I'm making $120,000, but really like show me some people that are so successful. Because there's some owners that I've seen that have come in and left a few months later, and they're like, I just can't sit there and lie to all these people over and over and over again.
We've had a lot of good people that work for us, and it never ends good. No one ever quits this business happy and excited. It's always some bullshit, whether I fire them or they get screwed over or some bullshit. It always ends bad. It always looks bad on you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Don't be naive. That's my main one, don't be naive. Now, from that experience, I look through companies now. Like when companies come to me, approach me, now I actually go do some background and some history, and I just don't let people just tell me what their company is about. I do the research myself, because you never know what you're getting yourself into.
For the people who believe in it and who really think that this is going to improve their lives, how much is the money worth? Like, how much is the money really worth to you at the end of the day? And how much is it worth to you that you are willing to look these people in the eye that you're going to be hiring and know that these people are going to get fucked over?